Thank you all so much for being here with the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. My name is Sheila Herlihy Hennessee. I'm the Director of Faith Organizing with VICPP, and we're really glad to be talking about this topic of how we as people of faith can support affordable housing, whether or not you have land to develop, whether or not you're an architect in your spare time. There's a lot of other things we can do as citizens to support the work of affordable housing on faith-owned land and in our communities and through legislation. So thanks for being with us this evening. We are going to hit on several different processes, the faith perspective, what the development process looks like, and then more concretely, how you can get involved. We'll have some question and answer time at the end of our couple of panels. And feel free to put any questions in the chat if you don't want to come off mute. I'd like to invite up first Jessica Fitzgerald, who I believe is the Director of Missions for the Presbytery of Eastern Virginia, to share a little bit about why this matters for people of faith.
When Sheila humbly asked me this week to share a brief faith grounding, I kept reflecting on Isaiah 58. To me, advocating for affordable housing is a call to justice and compassion. As people of faith, there is a clear mandate to love and care for all, especially those in need, and to advocate for justice. The call is to be repairers of the breach, to stand in the gap for the vulnerable, the weary, and the oppressed. While direct relief efforts such as food banks, clothing drives, winter shelters, and emergency housing assistance are vital, the work cannot stop there. True faith and action requires moving beyond immediate relief to systemic change. Across the nation and here in Virginia, there is growing housing supply and affordability crisis. Families are struggling to find safe, stable, and affordable homes. Rising costs, limited availability, and systemic inequities have left many without secure housing. The crisis is not only an economic issue, but also a moral one. Housing is a basic human need, and ensuring access to it is an expression of justice, compassion, and faith in action. Faith-based institutions have a unique opportunity to be part of the solution. They often hold land and resources that can be leveraged to meet community housing needs. By exploring ways to develop affordable housing on church-owned land, faith communities can address both the housing crisis and their own financial well-being. Beyond development, people of faith are called to advocacy. This includes lobbying for increased funding or affordable housing at local, state, and national levels, supporting policies that protect tenants and expand housing opportunities, partnering with community organizations, nonprofits, and government agencies to create sustainable housing solutions, educating congregations, friends, your family, and your neighbors about the moral and spiritual imperative of housing justice. It's a moral imperative. Affordable housing should not be a privilege, but a moral reality where we live and work. To seek justice for the oppressed, healing for the hurt, and hope for the despairing means ensuring that every person has a safe, stable, and affordable place to call home. As repairers of the breach, faith communities are called to rise to this challenge, moving from charity to justice, from relief to transformation, and from temporary solutions to lasting change. Together with God's help, through advocacy, action, and faith, a more just and compassionate housing future can be built, and the time is now.
Thank you so much, Jessica. That was
You're
beautiful.
welcome.
And I love how it's not just about like being repairers. Well, being repairers of the breach is such a broad call, but then actually the concreteness of taking care of our neighbors is meaningful in every single scope of action. So thank you for grounding us in that call. I am now going to invite up Tarvaris McCoy, who is the principal of the Real McCoy, which is a development firm, and also who pastors in his spare time in a congregation in Richmond. Not that there is any spare time for bivocational pastors.
Yes, I'm here, and I agree. As a bivocational pastor, there is no such thing as spare time. Um, but I think, as we think about one of the things that when Sheila and I first met, it's been I guess almost like 2 years ago now, and we began to talk about kind of some of the overlap that happens within faith communities as it relates to housing and community development. I think that it is so important for faith communities to be active in the space of housing and be active because it's what happens in our communities. Um, we're not called just to have a building in a space, but we're called to be a part of that community wherever our buildings are, wherever we meet, wherever we congregate, so to speak. We're called to take action and make a difference in that space. And so housing, of course, especially right now in this time, is a key way to do that. As was pointed out, there's a significant just a gap in housing at every level. We often talk a lot about the deeply affordable housing, but even on the workforce level or the moderate income level, that there are just gaps in housing in general. And so communities of faith, we have an opportunity to really participate and to do the work of filling that gap in whatever way we can. If that's making our land available, that's a wonderful way to do it. If that is actively engaging in it, perhaps, there is skills within the church that would allow some active working in that space. That's a way that we can do that. But certainly, I think the most basic way that we should all be participating is just by really being vocal and being thoughtful about what happens in our communities. When we see development happen, I think sometimes we can react in fear when some announcement is made. There's going to be housing developed in our communities, and sometimes out of not knowing what that is, we might initially react to it in a negative way. But as we kind of start to take note of what's happening, and as we become active on the front end, by the time that decision for housing in our community is made, we should be well aware of it because we should have been active from the beginning. And so I think that's the key area, as I think about it, where we really want to do work. For the better part of my career, I have been active with communities of faith and really bridging that community development gap, whether that was kind of community organizing with regard to the question of community development, or in my capacity now, that working with churches and houses of faith to help them activate land or buildings that they may have or that they may need to dispose of, and connecting them with partners who can help them create that space while at the same time benefiting in that process as well. It's important that we, as we do this work, we find other ways to support our ministries so that we can continue to do ministries. I used to work with a manager who would say, no money, no mission. and at the end of the day, what we do with the land and buildings that we hold in as our ministry really is a way that we can support our ministry and keep doing this good work and support our mission. And I'll just kind of leave it there.
Thank you, Tavares. And agreed. I think that coming together of development and mission is really key. So I will want to give a little bit more background, and I'm going to screen share briefly here. Virginia Interfaith has, over the last year and a half, almost 2 years, we've hosted 6 workshops for congregations that have been interested in building affordable housing. A lot of congregations have a surplus of land, are seeing declines in attendance, and have been thinking about how can we make this space continue to live our mission, even though our ministry might look a little bit different. At the same time, the impetus for tonight's program was the fact that not every faith community does have 5 acres of land in their backyard and the desire to build 100 units of affordable housing, and that makes perfect sense. But people of faith can and should still be speaking out in support of housing and more affordable housing. A piece that has been really useful in these conversations is understanding what the development timeline looks like. So that is what I am going to screen share now. Because, you know, I joke, I used to watch Extreme Makeover Home Edition, and I knew that that was sped up for television. You know, it doesn't just take a week to build housing. Got to take at least a year. But it turns out it takes more like 4 to 12 years, really 4 or 5 years if everything's going perfectly, and 12 years is not unheard of. So in order to develop housing, you need to figure out, discern and decide, yes, this is something we want to do. Then do feasibility and assessment, what's possible, cast a vision of why we're going to be doing this. And then you need to decide, are we building? Are we leasing? How are we mobilizing? And reach out to partners. That's a development partner. That's community partners. That's advocates in this space. That's a land use attorney. And seek approvals. This is one of the biggest question marks, and one that we're going to be spending some time talking about, because those approvals, the idea of a rezoning or a special use permit, that could cost tens of thousands of dollars and take anywhere from 4 months to 3 years. And require several going back to the drawing board and rewriting your designs. And all of that happens before you even take 1 shovel of dirt out of the ground. Financing and construction are their own hurdles along the way, trying to figure out how much money is needed to build this project and then respond to changes in the market. And then actually building the property. But once the property is built and furnished and the doors are open, you're not done. Managing the property is still something that people who run affordable housing facilities have to do. So people of faith can be helpful all along this continuum, from discernment through local approvals, through financing, all the way up to the celebration portion. And we're going to talk a little more about that now. Oops. So our first panel is how you can partner with local folks, whether that be perhaps a congregation that's in the process of building affordable housing, or other nonprofits or government agencies in your communities that work to provide affordable housing. Habitat for Humanity is a great example. There are tons of local shelters or local emergency financial assistance programs in communities all the way around Virginia. But our 2 speakers today are both from Roanoke. Reverend Joanna Paysour from, oh my gosh, who's Methodist. And I'm remembering the name of the church that you no longer pastor, and not the name of the church that you do pastor.
Greene Memorial United Methodist Church.
Greene Memorial, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Along with Natalie Kline, who works with the Roanoke Housing Authority. So I'm going to invite Joanna to share first about your congregation's journey in doing this and how people were able to support along the way. And then Natalie, we'll hear from you.
Great. Thanks so much to everyone for being here and spending time together. I am Joanna, and I'm the pastor at Greene Memorial United Methodist Church, which is now the newly merged church with Trinity United Methodist Church. Trinity has been a historic congregation We built our building right at the turn of the 20th century. We declined in size. We have a story that many of us have. And along somewhere around 2022, we began to discern that we needed to do something different with our building and began to look for what that might be and began to look for partners. And in 2023, partnered with a local nonprofit here in Roanoke in Restoration Housing who uses historic tax credits to create affordable housing. And so we are in the midst of the process. We are still in construction, but we are hopeful that here in less than 6 months, we will have 15 units of affordable senior housing built on the edge of downtown Roanoke. 3 of them will be permanent supportive housing. Multiple will be ADA compliant, but all of them will be to house 55 and plus up folks in our community. It's a really cool thing. They'll be in my church office and they will be in our church nursery, and we have rehabbed our choir room and all of our sort of I guess I call it the Sunday school wing, right? Like where you held Bible study and all of that. And all of their historic features will be saved. The transoms, the fireplaces, because we built that in 1920, will all be restored. And then the worship hall will be restored, and we'll keep that, and we'll keep we have a coffee house, which is not like coffee house like lattes. It's coffee house like folk music and bluegrass that happens on Friday nights. And so that will remain in the basement. And so our ministry and mission will still exist. We hope to put our NA meeting back into that building. All that will sort of continue on. But ways that I was really amazed that people could come alongside this process. One, NIMBYism is real, right? And one of our biggest fears was that we would have to go to the neighborhood association right in this process, right? We had done the hard work. We had prayed over this. We were ready to do this sort of reimagining of what our holy space had been, like a letting go and giving it into the care of love of God and love of neighbor. And then we thought, oh, these neighbors around us are going to be convinced that this is horrible. And I'm really grateful to all of the people of faith who showed up to the Neighborhood Association meeting and said, hey, whoa, like this is okay. We're not upset about this. Like it was a largely beneficial conversation. There were a couple of questions, but largely the people in the room were supportive. And I will give credit to the people of faith who showed up and made sure, like I had a couple of people who said, I'm going to go to the Neighborhood Association and ensure that this conversation that nothing gets twisted, because I think Tarvaris right, like people hear community development and they go, not me. And so we're really grateful for those people. We're also really grateful for the people. I will not forget the people who showed up at the zoning meeting, right? Who sat in the seat again in hopes. And again, our process luckily was very swift, right? We started this in about 2022. We hope to have people moved into our building in 2026. We are on the sort of 4-year plan. And we really only did sort of the zoning commission and then city council. But the people who were in city council chambers that day when we had to sort of stand up and present it and all of that work, I will remember that they came to sit amongst us, like people from my congregation and people from beyond my congregation. Those people especially, right, to stand with us in that sort of brave space. I'm really grateful for. And then I think there is a part that we have to name that for this to come to fruition is in part through historic tax credits and partnerships with the housing authority, but is also through financial giving, that there are other congregations that have given to make sure that this could take place. It's just a heartening way that we can say that this matters, right? Because we live in the Bible Belt, I suppose, we are diagonal from a Presbyterian church. There was a Presbyterian church on one corner of this intersection and our United Methodist Church on the other, and that this Presbyterian congregation has been vitally supportive of this project and supportive of this endeavor. I think is a witness again in a world desperate for seeing unity, of saying, yeah, we're really grateful that this is going in, and they're sort of a more affluent congregation that could be able to say like, no, this is good, it's okay. Yes, we still have our preschool daycare. All is well. And that statement of saying all is well is such a powerful thing in the midst of that community. So coming alongside us in neighborhood meetings, coming alongside the process, a city council, and financial support, right? Putting some mission money where, in this sort of more justice forward thought, I think is all ways that people can come alongside. And I will finally say, many people prayed over this process. And I don't think as people of faith, we can discount that, right? It was a lot of people who put a lot of prayer into this. And I think in many ways, I'm grateful for the way it was sort of led by that. So.
Thank you so much. Yes, that's wonderful. One of the VICPP's slogans is learn, pray, act. Like you learn what you can do, you pray about it, because prayer is powerful, and then you act on it. We
Yep.
put it into practice. So
For sure.
lovely. Thank you. Natalie, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I come from a unique perspective in that currently I work as a case manager for the Family Self-Sufficiency Program with the Roanoke Redevelopment Housing Authority. But my background is I'm an ordained Baptist pastor. And so I say I'm an undercover chaplain working for the Housing Authority. And so I get to do a lot of ministry that's on the ground and literally in the neighborhood. So there's so many ways that you can plug in to things that are already in place in your communities. I probably will speak a little bit from Roanoke perspective, just because that's where I reside and know all those connections. But I'm certain wherever you're at, you can find these same kind of connections. And Sheila mentioned one about connecting with local shelters. I worked with our local shelter for almost a decade, and in my last 3 years there, we started a program, an aftercare program, which was basically providing wraparound services for folks that were moving from homelessness into permanent housing. So a lot of shelters are doing that now, instead of just kind of having a Band-Aid effect and, okay, let's just get them a bed and meals. They're working to really get beyond constant homelessness into providing that stable housing, affordable housing, but also providing a wraparound care. And one of the greatest things was, when I did that position, I had congregations come alongside these folks, because we would provide case management services for up to a year after we help them get housed. And because a lot of times these folks have not ever had their own apartment. It's been a long time since they've, had their own apartment. So learning how to budget and learning how to, cook for yourself and things like that, when you've always, gotten the meal at the soup kitchen line or whatever, are like vital life skills that folks in congregations could totally come alongside and, help the folks that are new to renting an apartment, or even some of what I work with now. I'm trying to work with folks to get them out of public housing into possible ownership. Again, not an easy feat, and there's lots and lots of barriers in the way, but connecting with your nonprofits, we have several amazing nonprofits here in Roanoke that work with our homeless population, our unhoused folks. But we also have some amazing resources for folks that are just struggling, that may be in public housing, that may just be struggling to make ends meet in a regular apartment complex, or even paying mortgage. The local school system is another great way that I encourage folks to tap in with their community, because the teachers and administrators often have a pulse on things that are happening right there in the community that we can assist with. Be it providing books for kids, be it providing financial workshops for parents while the kids are, doing another activity. I think one of the biggest needs I've seen in doing this kind of work is helping people have a grasp on their finances, because we all struggle with it. It's a universal thing. I don't know anybody that doesn't struggle with it in my immediate circles. And, just being able to give them basic steps to be like, this is how you create a household budget. What do you do if there's an emergency? How do you save? And then, like, for example, we have an amazing resource here, and I think it's located actually throughout the state, called the Financial Empowerment Center. It might be called something different in your area, but I would definitely look that up to see how you and your congregation can help invest in that type of programming. Maybe you have accountants in your congregation that can come alongside folks that need that extra boost. Or we also, our local school system just opened up a community engagement center, which is another way that you can plug in to really connect with families right where they are. So I'm a big proponent of working with what's already there, because there really is a lot there. It's just a matter of pooling your resources. And so I really encourage, nonprofits and local congregations to come alongside each other to, to share those resources. Roanoke is a particularly very resourced city, but what I find interesting is that a lot of times we're just not sharing those resources, or there's new ones that happen or enter into the picture all the time, and I might not find out about it for 6 months, a year. I find out about it from one of my clients that I'm working with. They're like, "Oh, I just got connected with Urban Beginnings, which is a new resource here for expectant moms that are homeless or low income." So there's so many, ways to do that, but I think having this type of conversation with one another and just opening up those doors to have the opportunity to say, yeah, this resource, we can help single moms, we can help dads that are struggling, job resources, all kinds of things, are all excellent tools to help people find affordable housing and feel secure in the fact that they can. The last thing I'll say is, a lot of the clients I work with, they have a fear of success. And that might sound odd, but um, they have never been reassured that they can reach a goal and then continue and create a new goal and keep doing that, to have success, to have stable housing, to have a stable job, and just having someone come alongside them and say, yeah, you can do this, and helping them find the skills and the tools and the resources they need to encourage them that they can, because so often their entire lives they've been told they can't. So I think that's one of the best gifts we can give to our community folks that are struggling, to see that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and we're part of sharing and shining that light for them. So again, thanks so much for letting me be a part of this tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. We have a little bit of time for questions and answers for this first development and supporting process. So I'm gonna star our three folks, Joanna and Natalie and Tarvaris. Are there any questions? There were a few questions in the chat, so I'm gonna call those out unless people want to speak them out loud. All right. I will speak them out loud. So Andrew said some of the financial aspects are some very big questions. The government building housing, they can operate at a loss. The federal government can print money if so desires, although there are some things happening right now that I am not going to weigh in on. However, a private organization has a much harder time operating at a loss. So can you speak briefly about the financing piece? I put a few notes in the chat, but I'm gonna let you all answer. Joanna, you spoke briefly.
I can jump in on that one. That's kind of my area of my go-to area, really. So in most cases, that's where your partners come into play, because there are so many different aspects related to affordable housing development and how that's financed. I have worked on projects that were financed with as few as 3 sources, as well as projects that were financed with as many as 18 sources, which also included everything from, you know, housing tax credits, historic tax credits, all the way up to like that one with 18 also had a couple of different charitable donations. And so, you know, those partners who do this work really are professionals at kind of niching together those financing sources to put the deal together. And the other thing about I think one of the best things about having congregation support in doing this work is that in most cases, as a congregation, you know your local leaders, and if there is local support to be had, like financial support, then the best way to develop that is certainly starting from the congregational support.
I think that's key. You kind of have to know maybe somebody who you need to ask around and say who's somebody doing something creative in our community and who's doing it. And you need to talk to them is one of the best piece of advice I could tell you. We sort of ended up with a lot of conversations with a lot of different people before we landed where we were. I will also be totally transparent just in our process. And right, again, I'm just talking about my one experience here in the little star city in Southwest Virginia. We received money for our building, right? We did not necessarily, we sold our building to this partner. We sold Trinity United Methodist Church to what will be Trinity Commons LLC, this sort of corporation under that. We got money. The money that came for that came from the Community Land Trust, like that was a nonprofit. But we did not sell the building for what it was maybe worth. Now, there's some of that to argue, real estate, all of that. But we chose to do that sort of in a missional way, right? Like it wasn't a choice we didn't make. If we had maybe waited, maybe they were all, could we have gotten $250,000 for our building? It's a building that quote unquote may be worth more because of where the property, we chose because we knew this was the next right step for us, right? So I do want to put an asterisk here and not make it seem like, oh, you can give up your building and they're going to give you lots of money for it and then they're going to put in affordable housing. Like, no, like this is sort of a justice choice. So there was a bit of financial piece there. Now, for some people, there are ways for this to be a wildly more, you can make, but I think the scale of ours, right? We only have 15 units, right? This isn't something that's a large scale investment. But it's a really good partner and it's really asking around. You can start with places even like your food bank. Like who are you already in partners with and say, do you know anybody doing this? Like I think it's really, I asked a lot of people who they knew who might be crazy enough to come alongside us, right? And that's sort of how it got started.
And there is a non-exhaustive list of resources for congregations interested in digging in on this. I put the link in the chat, but we'll also email it out to everybody who's registered for this evening. So Janice, you're welcome to come off mute, but I can also read your question.
Sure, I'll read my question. I wanted to know how your local jurisdictions were involved in your development process or even in your discernment process, or if they were even involved beyond, the obvious. We're submitting our rezoning, we're submitting our site plan, or even if they were instrumental in that and expediting any of those processes for you.
Yeah, so Roanoke is lucky in that we are a larger area with a very small town feel. So let me just start with, like there is some some of that. But when this idea first started coming to us that, oh, we might have to transition, what if we did put housing here? Like, what if there's always room in God's house? Like, what if that is true? I actually had a conversation with a member of our planning committee, our planning team, our city manager's office, and said, is this something that would even be remotely possible in your realm of world to think that we could change the zoning? And I think that was really helpful. That came about because of conversations with a city council member that knew, a connection with, who's now our mayor, right? I knew Joe Cobb through different connections. Um, he happens to be a United Methodist clergy person, which we're grateful for. But now, but you know, but knowing somebody and sort of asking some questions was also really helpful. I will say Roanoke was wildly helpful to this, right? They were really beneficial to this process. They knew the need for affordable housing. That had been something that had come up in public spaces and in conversations in our community. And so, and from the work that's coming out of some of the stuff that Natalie talked about, it's very transparent. So they did sort of help us to expedite it a very transparent need. But it was also very clear, the sort of planning work of our city management sort of said, no, this is in line with many of our goals with this area. You know, where we were located and where the city wanted to expand housing was helpful. So I would say yes, we were really lucky. I feel like Roanoke City was very supportive of the process.
And I'll share, I've sat in a few jurisdictions that have done a little bit around done a lot around affordable housing. And having the city or county's support is really, really helpful in terms of getting a lot of that financing in place, right? It's hard to apply for Virginia's State Housing Trust Fund if your locality doesn't even think this is a good idea. At the same time, there are localities who will say, oh, yes, 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 we do need affordable housing, but not over here and not over there and not in that neighborhood. And that's the NIMBY attitude Joanna mentioned, that not in my backyard. We need it, just not in my backyard, not close to my children, not casting shadows on my tomato garden. And so local governments and our elected officials have to balance that. And we're going to be talking a lot about that in our next segment on advocacy. I'm going to hold for 30 seconds. This panel went a little bit long, so I'm just going to hold for 30 seconds in case there are any final thoughts about partnering on the affordable housing conversation. All right. Well, thank you all. Thanks to Joanna and Natalie. We're gonna now shift the conversation to our advocacy, the advocacy topic of speaking up for what is right, making housing more and more accessible and more affordable. Advocacy essentially is speaking up for something you believe in. You may have heard of self-advocacy in, kids bullying programs, and that is one piece of advocacy. In the government world, it usually means speaking to your elected officials or government officials and saying, hey, I want to see more of this or less of that. So you can advocate on tax rates, you can advocate on money for the arts. There's been a lot of, and Virginia Interfaith, public policy is in our name. We are an advocacy organization. So this is really our focus. But you can advocate at the school board, you can advocate with your city, with your county, and you can advocate at the state or national level. And while VICPP focuses on the state level, many housing decisions come down to the local level. So advocacy and constituent engagement, the engagement of people who actually live in the community, makes a difference, especially for elected officials, right? Because they depend on constituent votes to remain in office. So these voices are absolutely essential. I'm going to invite up Jason Tickle, who is CEO of the Rappahannock Valley, Greater Rappahannock Habitat for Humanity.
Central Rappahannock
Central
River.
Rap-
Yes.
Thank you.
A lot of words.
Yes.
Thank you for having me. I'm very glad to be here. Central Rappahannock River, we used to be known as Caroline County Habitat for Humanity, but through local advocacy and federal partnership, we were to expand into, we now cover 5 counties: Caroline, Essex, Richmond County, Westmoreland County, and Essex. I'm sorry, King and Queen. So we had to get the longer name, so more words to get out there. But tracking with what has already been said here tonight, the local advocacy in my mind is the first step for anything. As Sheila mentioned, if you want to get any money from the Housing Trust Fund, you have to have buy-in from your local government. Most of my projects have been funded through federal sources, but it's the same thing there. I have to have the local buy-in. Very minimum, you'll have to have letters of support, but a lot of times the funding that you can get from the state or the feds require some sort of local match. So you have to make sure that you have that local support. And they are the gatekeepers. They do the zoning. Everything revolves around the folks on your local board of supervisors or town council, whatever government you have in your locality. So it's so important to build those relationships with your local elected officials. There's a few things that I always recommend that you do. Is, it is relationship. As the leader of my organization, I probably spend half of my time, maybe even more certain times of the year, in the advocacy role, of talking to local officials, federal officials, state officials. And you have to be part of the conversations. Now, I'm lucky, it's my full-time job, so I get to do it. That's why it is so vital, like somebody else mentioned, finding partnerships, nonprofits like Habitat or Homes, or there's dozens of them in the state. Some of them are just one county, some of them are regional, but they're great at what they do. So building your partnerships are going to be key. But you as the local resident, you will become the voice and the face really that needs to do the advocacy, that go up to the board of supervisors. So, craft those relationships. If you're here, you're probably a community leader anyway, so you probably already have them, I would imagine. But make sure they understand how important it is to you, and as many people as you can, get them to relay that same message. And then when you're going for the projects, try to create win-win scenarios. With us, we have 2 programs, one that's open to the general public, one that's open to teachers and first responders. So it kind of creates some more buy-in for them. They go back to their constituents. They love to hear that their local teachers and first responders are able to get housing. So that kind of creates something for them to, when people are talking about NIMBYism, I always say, if I got at least one teacher in my group of houses, I just say, what, you don't want a teacher to live next to you? And usually the NIMBYism goes away. So you kind of create those scenarios that are win-win. And then, of course, talk about the return of investment. When you are sharing with them, hey, we want to apply for this grant, you throw in 20,000, it could mean 4 million, or whatever the case. So show that to them. One thing with local government, unlike our federal government, they have to balance the budget. They have to. So they can't ignore the realities of the local, funds they have. So talk about that so that they also can when they're going to hear from constituents that don't want it, they can have some stuff to rebut and say, hey, do you know this is going to bring this much revenue to us, or whatever the case may be. And then follow up with your success stories with them is really key. But it all starts on a local level. It's allowed us so far in the last 4 years to bring in, over $3.5 million in federal dollars in housing. And if it wasn't for my local partnerships, we never could have done that. And what you'll find is, what I'm seeing across the state is the local governments want and need affordable housing. So it's the ripest I've ever seen it in my 14, almost 15-year career. So don't be afraid to have these discussions with them. They're really open all throughout the state. And it's really, the sky's the limit if you just, build the connections, and the resources are out there.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Jason. And yeah, I think you're exactly right. You cannot top relationships. You can't argue with stories, and having good facts and figures to back it up helps immensely. So I want to mention, Virginia Interfaith and all the organizations who are speaking this evening are 501c3. We are nonpartisan, but that doesn't mean we don't have values, and that doesn't mean we aren't going to weigh in on public policy when it affects the values that we hold dear, like making sure that our communities have safe and affordable places to live. So that is what we get to do. I get to speak a little bit more in depth on state housing policy, because that's my day job. I lead VICPP's housing campaign, and there are 2 bills that we are looking at that will affect everywhere in Virginia, and they'll be brought into the General Assembly, our legislature, this coming January. The first is a bill called Expediting Affordable Housing. And this bill would allow localities to pass an ordinance making it easier to get through rezoning for anyone building affordable housing. The specifics are up to the locality, but that means that instead of waiting those 6 months to 3 years on your rezoning process and not being sure at the end if the city council or county supervisors will vote in favor or against, you have a lot more clarity and a lot less uncertainty in your pursuit of building affordable housing. That makes the finances more secure, that makes your timeline more secure, and all of that's incredibly helpful. The second bill is Yesing God's Backyard, sometimes called Faith in Housing. And this is a bill that would say, across the entire Commonwealth of Virginia, any nonprofit that's exempt from property tax, most of which are faith communities, can build multifamily affordable housing on land that they own. It still maintains, obviously following health and safety regulations, needing, water and sewer hookups, all of that. But again, it circumvents that rezoning process and says, no, when it's a mission-oriented project on faith-owned land or land owned by other nonprofits exempt from property tax, you have to allow it to go through. So both of these bills are really impactful. And I will say that when talking to legislatures on the state level, the same principles Jason was sharing still apply. The idea of creating relationships, showing up in the space, understanding the game, and messaging in a win-win sort of way. But the other 2 things that I always share with folks when doing advocacy trainings is, number 1, you belong in this room. It can be intimidating to speak to your delegate or your state senator or your mayor or your county supervisor. It can be intimidating, but I want to reassure you and every other person, we are residents of this Commonwealth. We are residents of these localities, and our voices matter. And they ought to matter, not just as voters, but also as people who are being affected by all of these decisions. So don't be afraid to share your perspective, because each individual voice makes a huge difference. And then second is a truism in the community organizing game. You can't argue with stories. So it's true that facts and figures can be swayed in different ways. It's true that depending how you phrase a statistic, you can make it sound really good or really bad. And it's true that not everyone's story is the same, but nobody can argue with the story. When I talk about, there's an affordable housing project that just broke ground a week and a half ago here in Richmond. It's on the property of St. Elizabeth Catholic Church. They're going to build 56 new units of housing. It's an incredible project. We're so excited. And they started this process in 2017 and hoped to break ground in 2020. 2020, a lot of things changed. But one of the many things that changed in the course of the pandemic was that the cost of materials kept rising and rising and rising and rising. And so at the end, their cost for construction was going to be increased by about 50%. And because they had already gone through the arduous rezoning process and changed their site plan to meet local specifications, they couldn't change things like the exterior building materials to save money, because then they would have had to begin the rezoning process all over again. That is a real story of a real affordable housing development that I've seen and been involved in conversations for several years now. We might disagree about the purpose of red tape or the need for this regulation or that conversation, but that story is real. And the cost and the years-long delay for families, for 50+ families who could have benefited from affordable housing, has an actual impact on those lives. So sharing those stories with your legislators, with your local decision makers, with your friends and community and neighbors is really important and makes a big difference. I'm going to end it there and give a moment for questions for myself or Jason about advocacy at the state or local level. Oh my word, somebody from Central UMC asked about the Dillon Rule. I could talk about the Dillon Rule for an hour, but I try not to. I'm going to take a first stab at that question and then let you speak, Jason, and see what else is in the chat. But yes, the reason that we need the Expediting Affordable Housing Bill is because local leaders cannot pass an ordinance because of the Dillon Rule. The Dillon Rule is this legal concept that says local governments, city councils, county supervisors do not have any power unless the state explicitly grants it to them. Now, some states have chosen to say that's dumb and immediately turned it into what's called home rule. Some states have taken a middle ground. Virginia has a particularly strong interpretation of the Dillon Rule. And so there's a lot of things that local governments cannot do without state permission, including inclusionary zoning ordinance or affordable dwelling unit ordinances, and including creating a streamlined process based on affordability. A locality can rewrite their entire zoning code. That is a permission they already have. But rewriting an entire zoning code is something most cities and counties do maybe every 50 years or so. Maybe, if you're lucky. And so having some kind of ordinance that says our 40-year-old zoning code is not cutting it right now. We're not ready to rewrite the whole thing, but we do know we need something to move a little bit faster. That is the idea behind expediting affordable housing. Jason, do you have any other thoughts about the Dillon Rule? Oh, you are on mute at the moment. Hang on.
Sorry about that. Yeah, the Dillon Rule is definitely something that we all have to face at some point if you're doing anything in Virginia with local government. And it's used locally and statewide kind of as a, as kind of ways to get them. So yeah, it's definitely, you can't do it unless the state grants it to you. But then a lot of times you'll find with the housing, maybe part of the state wants it and the other part doesn't. So they will grant it to part of the state and not all of it. So it's just, it does complicate things for sure. That's really all I can add to it, other than it. I guess it just depends on what side of the coin you're on. It can be a good thing or a bad thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. That is certainly true. Another question I see in the chat is, who are champions for affordable housing in the General Assembly? So we're still recruiting our patrons for these bills. Some folks who are definitely clarion voices in support of affordable housing in Virginia's legislature. Delegate Marcus Simon, Delegate David Bulova, Senator Jeremy McPike, Delegate Shelley Simons. It's also a lot of fun because affordable housing, so those four, many of them from Nova, one from Hampton Roads, Josh Cole from Fredericksburg, another great advocate for affordable housing. I will say some of these zoning conversations and housing conversations are also fun because, again, we're nonpartisan. We love crossing party lines. And so last year, Delegate Ann Tata from Virginia Beach supported our bill around helping congregations build affordable housing. Senator Bill Stanley, who's way down in Southwest, farther Southwest than Natalie and Joanna, at least, he supported the bill on faith communities. So it is not just one party or the other. Right now, both chambers are controlled by Democrats. So the names that come top of mind happen to be Democrats, but there are champions on both sides of the aisle around this. And if you're meeting with your legislator and want to share more about this, let me know. I can give you fact sheets and come with you if it's helpful. Any other questions on advocacy?
I would just add real quickly on that, never make an assumption.
Yes.
Always assume that they're open-minded. I found most of the time when you talk to people one-on-one, even the ones that have these really scary reputations, when you talk to them one-on-one, it's not usually like that always. So go in with an open mind. And if you're trying to get a housing project done, I would recommend when you go talk to them, at least at that time, only talk about your housing project. Just keep it simple and talk about that. Don't go in with 7 different things. And that would be the thing that I would recommend to do.
Mm-hmm. That's actually a really good point. Yeah. Yes, when you can have a focused ask is often a really helpful way of advocating. We are people and we believe a million things, and the legislature will vote on 3,000 bills this coming year. But for one conversation, having one priority can help make it a lot clearer. And there's always room for agreement. There's always a place to build a bridge and build a relationship. Fabulous. Any other questions from the peanut gallery? I mean, y'all are welcome to come off mute or throw something in the chat. All right. Well, thank you again, Jason. I'm going to wrap up with just a few little notes before we close out the meeting. So first of all, as we mentioned, there are some of these bills that are going to be introduced in Virginia's legislature next year. But the question remains, who will be in Virginia's legislature next year? Well, that, my friends, is up to you. There is a big election on November 4th. We've got governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general on the ballot. We've got a bunch of local offices on the ballot, from Commonwealth's attorneys to sheriffs. But we also have every single seat in Virginia's House of Delegates on the ballot. That's more than half of our legislators. And so making sure that you vote, not just for that top of the ticket, but for every single race, makes a big difference in terms, especially of housing policy, where there are so many decisions that happen on a state and on a local level. And then that's not the end of things. Once we have elected people to office, the energy is not over. So VICPP has a big advocacy day called Day for All People. It'll be January 21st of 2026. That is a Wednesday, but we'll have a bus, 2 buses from Northern Virginia, 1 bus from Hampton Roads area, and 1 bus from Roanoke. So last year had over 400 people from all sorts of faith traditions from all over Virginia, meeting with their legislators and learning about these issues and connecting here in the state's capital. It's an incredible event, so you can mark your calendar for November 21st and join us at Day for All People to dig in deeper on affordable housing and actually do some of this advocacy in person. And finally, if there are any other ways you'd like to connect with Virginia Interfaith, our mission is to engage people of faith and people of goodwill in the work of racial, social, and economic justice through Virginia's policies and practices in education, prayer, and action. That's a big mission. We appreciate your help in connecting with your faith communities, in doing research on our issues, in advocating with legislators, in donating, and in staying involved in this work of justice from a faith-based perspective. When we stand together, we can hold out a sign of hope for our community, and we can give each other strength through the ups and the downs of this crazy world. So once again, I'm just so grateful for all of you being on this evening, so grateful for your interest and support of affordable housing. Please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or my colleague Amanda if you've got any questions or if we can be supportive.